Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Dor Zakai, and I run the solution
Morning, good
engineering team
afternoon.
in EMEA for NGINX. And together with me, I've got one of my senior solution architects, Mr. Antoon, who's part of the Ninja clan of NGINX in EMEA. And together today, basically, we're going to have, I don't want to call it as a follow-up from our previous discussion with Oren Pencil from VMware, but as kind of, that was a build, I would say. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the specificality of Kubernetes around security. What are we seeing in the market? What are the trends? Obviously, Anton, before I'll let you introduce yourself, I'm going to say a few more things, so you have to hold it just for another second. But with your experience, we're going to talk a little bit about market trends. What are we seeing within security? Is it solving some of the challenges that we have with APIs, for example, how Kubernetes can go in, and basically just have a very interesting conversation to share from our own experience and what we're seeing. So, Anton, the ball to you, please. Why won't you introduce yourself?
Ooh, yeah. So, didn't you just steal my thunder again?
Listen, there's that's the way we do it here.
Yeah. Solution architect. I guess it says it all. I mean, we think about solving customer problems. That is for me what sums up to be solution architect, right? It's that talk to customers and fix their problems. From a technology point, and be honest and be crystal clear about what we can do and what we shouldn't do, and how to solve things differently if needs be.
And I think that the kind of the definition that you put to a solution architect is probably the right one, right? Because as we go in and have conversation with different customers, different events, we used to have a lot of them face-to-face. Now they're more virtual, but still, we got a lot of engagement with a lot of customers. And I know that whenever I meet a customer and we're starting to have a conversation to understand a little bit more about their strategy, about what are they trying to do, we're not going to go into all the architectures on the first meeting. We're definitely not going to do it now on this live stream. And as all of our existing followers, subscribers, and all those who are, passionately listening and watching us every single time we go live, you know that we're very much fans of the Sesame Street Simple. So I think the number one question to actually start with is when I go to a customer, and Anton, I heard you on our last meeting, when was it? 2 days ago, probably. No, sorry, last week with a customer, where we started with the basic question of, where are you exactly with your Kubernetes adoption, right? And the funny thing is you get a lot of different types and levels of answers on this. A lot of them will say, oh yeah, Kubernetes, we all play with it. We all did this, we all did that. And then when you kind of, okay, so what's your production strategy? Is there some kind of a timeline? And all of a sudden you see people taking a little bit of a step back and saying, oh, listen, we tried this, we tried that. So what do you hear? What do you hear from customers when you ask them about, what's your strategy? How are you positioning Kubernetes? Because obviously there are different stakeholders, but as I said, Sesame Street Simple. Let's start from the beginning. What are you getting?
I get everything and everything in between, and that is the reality, right? There's folks just starting out. There's just folks leading the world, just folks all out Kubernetes, all out cloud only. There's guys, running on hyperconverged. Just had a conversation with the guys with the teams running on Nutanix. I see everything. I mean, yeah, and over just in between.
Okay, and when you say you see everything, does that mean that you're seeing people that they have their built-in full-on strategy on what they're going to do, how they're going to manage their Kubernetes, which platforms they're going to use, the whole shebang of it? Or you still see customers kind of, we're not sure. Where would you take them, right?
Yeah, well, the Nutanix guys are the guys running on Nutanix are actually quite interesting. They made a deliberate choice for that platform as their infrastructure. Fair enough. But as I don't know why and how that came about, but they were stuck on Kubernetes 1.14, and that's 2 years old, right? And so there's a ton of capabilities that is just not there is really not there because it wasn't invented by the capability of the Kubernetes API at the time they were speaking, and the converse is true as well. People just sourcing. So we had an internal conversation on some certain capabilities of AKS, and then we had this light bulb moment. So but this is a 1.21 kind of feature, and AKS is probably not up to speed with that. And guess what? Yeah, AKS already serves Kubernetes 1.21. So it is sometimes we are in catch up mode even.
So it's an interesting one, because when I think that customer that we were in a meeting together, it kind of was as what I like to call the coffee side conversation, right? Or the water cooler conversation. One of the things that somebody reached out to me on an offline, and was actually saying, you know what, we do have some kind of a strategy. We know what we want to do. We know how we want to position things, and we already started. But what's going to happen if we're making a mistake? What's going to happen if we need to roll back a bit? All the role-based access that we're doing right now, all the different management scenarios that we're seeing, things are definitely changing, right? You start with one application, you go on, you get multiple apps. So what would you say, if they were here with us today with, no pressure on anything, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so the cool thing about them is that they've got their ducks in a row, right? They know, they've come to terms with the fact that Kubernetes is a set of APIs that orchestrate infrastructure and networking and all kinds of stuff that all the moving bits of your what it takes to publish an application. And they realized, okay, so we need to get connect the customer to the application. And at the end of the day, we need metrics to observe what's going on, and it's as simple as that. They boiled the essence down to just that. And guess what? That's what an ADC is all about. That's what a load balancer is all about. Getting the visibility of the traffic, securing stuff that's coming in, and making sure that it works and that it's observable.
And
that's really what it is.
And you called out a few different things here, right? I want to address them. You called out the APIs. I think I heard you mentioning Ingress. I got a soft spot for that, so I heard you doing that. We're all in with the whole microservices play. What do you see? Because I know you and I talked about the new or the latest blog post that we saw in the Kubernetes blog, that is Kubernetes networking with the gateway APIs, and where are we going with this? What's your view? And we'll share the link in a second here on the chat. But what's your view on this?
So when you speak to an audience, as guys are just getting started, just getting to terms with what is Kubernetes and how can I fit that into my infrastructure, my view on the next generation of data center evolution, basically, to all the guys getting to work stuff. Then it's sometimes we lose. Well, I sometimes lose track, but it's so good to see that the stuff that we've been working on has been it validated, really. Like we're not alone seeing these problems, right?
And I'm sorry to cut you over on this, but we're not alone on this. This is something very important to me, because obviously as NGINX, and I got to call it out, we've got a very strong tie into the OSS, the open source community, right? We're working a lot with open source. We're still doing a lot of things on open source. And I think the beauty of this is we're actually seeing a lot of the movement. Yeah, go ahead.
We're, open source all the way. Yeah. And fair enough for those customers who appreciate, contributing back to NGINX, running our NGINX plus Ingress is probably a fine way. But the cool thing is take the way that we solve problems for getting traffic into Kubernetes into an application, and doing a blue-green or doing method-based routing to a particular service. that is the stuff that we kind of solve, and that's what you see coming back in that gateway, that next generation of ingress, and it felt like vindication. Yes, we're not alone. The rest of the community sees these problems also. That's nice.
Yeah, and we just shared it, and we just shared it here because I think it's really important to show, and you also see the collaboration between the different companies, and at the end of the day, it's all contributing back to the community, and together we just grow stronger, better, faster, and we can understand much more than where we are now. Because the minute that, and I think we've seen it multiple times during the different conversations, and even in our own internal calls where we talk about the future and deciding about roadmap, we're definitely seeing that there's a lot of interest and a lot of support coming from the field when we start sharing the experience, especially from an open source perspective, right? A lot of them are going there because there's no commitment, and then you can just grow into it, and maybe when you go enterprise, you get some benefits around that, but it's still, that's the baseline that pretty much got us to where we are, right?
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, the problems, especially especially when you start moving into like, okay, so step back. Kubernetes is a whole different world, right? So everything is expressed as some API, and that immediately begs the question: so who does what again? Because at the end of the day, the other thing that's playing a big part is self-service. So how do you delegate the stuff that you really don't want to do because it's a chore? And how do you delegate that, to another team, to the application guys, or how do you those funky requests? How you can, like the blue greens, like the canaries, or and whatnot, that's all baked into our ingress, and that's regardless of open source or commercial. Yeah, I like that. So.
And this is a good point that you're raising, right? But the whole who's going to own it, who's going to drive it, the whole conversation between the DevOps, the SecOps, the NetOps. I know we talked about it in the past, but this is something I keep on repeating all the time, because to me, the fact that we can actually bring different teams together and understand all of a sudden that it's not, one master to rule them all, or that entire domain and everyone is kind of fighting for attention. It's actually going back to the whole role-based access, and I can do things on my own rather than developing shadow IT strategies and doing things in the background where we can collaborate, work together, and get to a much better results, especially as we've seen it, with the work around the ingress controller and the different things that we can do from open source to the paid versions, right?
Yeah, and sometimes mildly joking, I call it the Wild West, and to me that is also the beauty that Kubernetes brings. It's pretty much it's all of the same, but in a completely new way, and that also means that it's a way of resetting and recalibrating your view on who does what, and because that you can answer. Well, you have to answer that question from scratch again, but you can also, and you're not limited by previous restrictions that were imposed on you by previously built infrastructures. And so yes, it's a Wild West, and yes, you can tailor those approaches to your organization from scratch again, and that is the cool thing. But yes, sometimes it feels a bit like a Wild West,
And I think this is where we come to play more and more around the what we kind of call the application business, right? Because every app is a modern app today, right? Everyone is, we've got modern apps, we do everything HTML, we push everything to the web, we've got a web version for this, we got a web version for that. But as you get into this, it's like, okay, what's the real vision? How
Yeah, I'm gonna go talk over you, because are we is everybody really so what is a modern app then, Dor? That is, I mean, I see there's a couple of things, couple of ingredients that you need to have in place, right? It means, especially if you're working with web apps or with mobile apps, you need to have this need is a bit of a strange word, I guess, but make sure that you have a separation between your front end, your style sheets and whatnot, and the API calls that you do. So you have a defined API, and what that is pretty relevant. It could be gRPC, it could be an open API, it could be something like that. GraphQL comes to mind. There's tons of options there. So that's one of the ingredients. Separate your front end from your back end and have them communicate through a well-defined API. That's step one. The other aspect that I would argue for a modern app is to compose your entire API as a set of microservices, because it's not a goal in itself to go microservices, right? I mean, at least in my feeling, it shouldn't be. But it serves a purpose, because if the stuff that you're building, the stuff that you're taking through test, and the end of the day is you want to have a little bit of independence, so that you can have managed teams that are able to manage a single API endpoint, or a subset of the API, the microservice, really, to align on that and work with that, and so that you have that velocity of change, and that you can bring the goodness of what microservices is supposed to bring you into you as a company, that you can have that speed, that acceleration, that and when you get to that point, yes, then you can really say we have a modern application.
Yeah, you make.
Sorry for the rant there.
No, listen, I cannot say you're not making very good points, and I think we and we're going to share here in a second the video or the presentation that we did around microservices, so you can all catch it here on the YouTube link. But these are all really good questions, and I think doing some of that probing is one of those things that we do when we have conversation with customers. It's all about the discovery and understanding on both sides, right? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? Saying that, I want to make it a bit more interesting, right? And let's throw a spin ball or a curveball here. We got a question from one of our viewers, from Dave. He's basically asking what is the NGINX recommended strategy to support a large number of WebSockets, right? So I'll let you, Anton, think for a second before we're going to comment on that, right? As this is a very large type of a question. So maybe give it a quick kind of view from what you're seeing from your own experience, obviously from the field.
Yeah,
it's a very good, Dave. It's a very good question. We're probably going to need to also highlight and maybe even jump on a quick call to explain it a bit more, so things will not get completely out of context. So you have to excuse us. But Anton, maybe kind of our strategy to support those large number of WebSockets. What do we usually see? How customers usually do that, or what is the best way to do it? And again, there's no commitment here, Dave, but just from a storyline.
Yeah. So that thing is it NGINX and to the same extent the NGINX Ingress controller comes out of the box with a sensible set of defaults. And yes, if you go beyond whatever we decided is sensible at the start, then yes, probably its stuff is going to break. But by and large, and so that's one thing. The other thing is we're very careful to keep in check with the Kubernetes paradigm of not having state in the Ingress controller itself unless you explicitly do so. And there's a good couple of reasons to do so, but. And so we have a WebSocket support out of the box in the Ingress, and so I'm inclined to say, yes, it should just work, given memory and CPUs.
And just for this
is where I suspect the curveball is coming from.
Exactly, and just for the sake of people who will be following up on this on an offline version, or when we're going to go offline from this, we share the link so everyone can kind of take a look into some more details into our Ingress controller, so they can follow up on that, and then they can reach out to us and ask some more questions. But good shout out, Dave. Thank you for that.
And I will call it out when I do not know, and this is one of those cases where I suspect there might be some more at play. But the cool thing is, and I had the same thing actually today, where a customer of ours called out, "Hey, we created a PR for the Ansible role," and before I could even, so I had a quick chat with the devs on that one, and they we picked it up, and it was fixed before I could even start to begin a reply saying I've nudged the one of the guys to have a look at it. And so I'm keen to see where we can get you an answer for this one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff going on, and I always go back to the apps because that's the thing that is very close to my heart as as an end user, and also someone that sits on the other side where we deal with different type of application as both consumers and trusted advisors and everything around that. And one of the things that I always see is the transition from the monolithic apps to the microservices, the all of a sudden that full-blown hit me coin drop type of a moment. Oh my God, we cannot push this update because we're going to need to break our whole application structure and create something new. And that's, to me, is the beauty of moving on to that next phase, is that maturity of, okay, we're now going to be focusing on developing our apps, but implementing that microservices strategy, implementing that inside the different containers so we can actually work. We can actually have different types of RBAC, role-based access for the different developers, for the network guys. So all of a sudden you get that streamlined operation, well-oiled machine where everyone is kind of responsible for their own thing without, harming, putting in danger, or, I'll call it even putting our organization at risk from an API perspective, right? So, the whole Kubernetes story around security and apps. Do you think there's a change that we're seeing right now with the apps moving more and more into containers, more and more working with APIs? Do you see that change with customers, that they understand, we see a lot of vulnerability out there. We see a lot of hacking groups. I'll call them in a second, right?
Yeah, and have you considered the impact of going containerized? So it's like really minimized. So create a container and you just specify what's in there, right?
But there is a challenge of going just container, right? There is a challenge there. You're going to need to rewrite your.
Yeah, but the whole point is so at some point you have a container that's responsible for a subset of the API, right? And that means that if you just naively curl it, then you're already pushing it to it's very easy to exploit that. And so how do you do the basic stuff like rate limiting or other kinds of protection for security? How do you even, dare I say it, put up
mitigating almost?
Well, yeah. No. How do you how do you expose, how do you protect from defined threat campaigns, stuff like that?
And what would you say? What would be your recommendation on that? Because it definitely eases up the tension, right?
The network team would point to the application developers, right? It needs to be fixed in the application. But do you have any idea how much mess you have to drag into a container to start addressing that kind of exploits? And this is the time where because you want your deployment pipelines to run fast and quick, and be unencumbered with all the stuff that you like that to be dragged in, and so you want to consolidate that somewhere, right? But you do not want to put that in the hands of just a single security team who are 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 heads if you're a really big company, writing and authoring policies that address that. And how do you go about that? And then we come back to the Wild West again, right? So because Kubernetes, at least with what we do, we're able to delegate that stuff to a number of teams. And I'm not saying that one team should be the go-to or be the be-all and end-all of that, but different organizations, different solutions, and that's the nice thing. And I think we're only starting at the starting to discover the possibilities there. But that's my firm belief.
That's interesting. Everything you said, because it's To me, there's kind of almost a new theme going on between the microservices, the APIs, the going on to Kubernetes. It's kind of going back in a way to things that we've been preaching for a while around delegate. Don't hold everything in one basket to one team. You and I talk about it all the time with, with my background in security, your background in network, in DevOps, in software. It's funny because we get to a point today that a lot of our conversations are all of a sudden you, and this is how I love you, right? You complete me in the terms of, as a security person, we used to say no on everything. And now all of a sudden it's like, you know what? This is not really our responsibility now. There are different places, there are different ways to fix it, because from a security perspective, the easiest thing was always block and drop, right? The thing is, we cannot do it anymore.
And all the way to the beginning of our conversation, right? So it's sometimes quite sometimes it's not that particular company doesn't have Kubernetes running. It's because the security guys or some team realizes that part of their job is now to do the same as they always did, except in Kubernetes, and so they have to onboard themselves and get familiar with their view of the world in parts of Kubernetes, and so sometimes it's they're in a running environment, and that's the apps guys they run Kubernetes like crazy, like they've never done before, and then on comes the security team. So how do I do what I always used to do, but in Kubernetes? That is sometimes part of a big part of the question, and then you have to realign what's going on in Kubernetes with guys who are really mature in that operation, but then applying security to it.
And should I even dare and throw into the fire or into the mix the service mesh approach? And just call out the fact that, hey, we can do more things. We can, we can even consider that, or we looked into this.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it depends on your view and on service meshes, right? So a very cool invention of Kubernetes was the container or the pod network, right?
Yeah.
Except that little biggie, can you encrypt it? And the answer is it depends on the CNI that you pick. But it's not something that's managed out of default from Kubernetes. And so, an API evolved, right? Service mesh API with, sidecars being injected based on some reverse proxy that's programmable in some way. But, let's keep our eye on the ball here. We'd like to have, TLS encryption, machine to machine. So mutual TLS, governed by certificates that you can revoke, both for clients and for servers, and that's it. So if you can deliver that, that's all good and well. And the other thing is, especially if I look at Istio, if I look at the problems that Gateway API is in that blog post is summing up, right? They're valid use cases, they're valid concerns. The gateway of the layer 7 ingress capabilities of Istio actually solve a good bit of that, and including maybe the role-based access. So are you going to go to Istio for an ingress capability, or for the service mesh? And maybe it's all mixed up, and the blurred lines and whatnot. But interesting. I'd say if you're trying to solve role-based access, if you need to do some advanced ways of delegating, and you have that requirement for MTLS, then that's a fair ask, right? But you
need to handle the traffic, the traffic management, the security. You need to be transparent in all of that. So it's definitely, and you know what, that this is exactly what I like about these streams, right? You start a conversation. We talk about something that is extremely huge topic, right? We usually go into different workshops and discovery sessions with customers where they're bringing different types of people from their group, and we've been talking about this for 30 minutes, trying very hard to keep it Sesame Street simple, because I think, that's the whole idea. I know it's hard sometimes, so we're sharing some links here so people can follow up and then read some more. People also more than welcome to hit us up in the different ways. So we can see and we can try and follow up on some things. I think that at the end of the day, our what would you say would be our recommendation from a security perspective, right? As we're summarizing everything, because we talked about what we're seeing with Kubernetes. We talked a little bit about microservices. We talked a little bit about service mesh. I think maybe finalizing that from the security side, right? It's all, I know, and we're always preaching for that. It's everyone in one room sitting together, understanding exactly what we're trying to achieve and what are the things that we're doing today. Because I think the last thing we want to do, especially in this type of conversation, is to hold separate teams and everyone holding their cards close to their chest. I think this one should be like an open face poker, at least for the first round, as we start and understand more and more how we work together. So what's your view of this?
Yeah, it's at the end of the day is like everything. So what is security? It's especially for from the perspective of dealing with traffic, make sure it's secure, make sure it's encrypted, manage those certificates really, really carefully, and that is it. And from that, everything else follows, right? So if you manage your certificates properly, that you'll have a security team doing that, right? And with that, it will follow that you need to take some certain steps to manage that properly in a Kubernetes environment, especially if you're running multiple apps on a single Kubernetes cluster. That's it.
And you know what? I would actually think that sometimes as you're running multiple apps, right, is probably do some testing on one or two, right? This is one of those things that we see every now and then, right? People, that's the whole beauty of this, right? They're not dependent, and you can actually go ahead, test something here, see if it works, and then gradually scale up, or even scale down in a way. I think this is something that we're missing a lot of the times. It's that point of scaling up and down.
Yeah, well, and that's Kubernetes 118 ingress class, part of the API now, done, part of the spec, and that means that and I brace that with a number of caveats. So assuming that the ingress implementation under test implements that one, you're free to run a couple of ingresses adjacent, and that's the beauty of it. And at the end of the days, if you set it up, if architect it well, there's that architect bit again. If you architect it well, just flick over the default by the time you're done with testing, and then you should see all of your ingresses migrate. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah. And we all have an uncle named Bob, so I don't see a problem with that.
Mine's called Robert.
Robert, yeah, but we all know the nickname, right? So let's leave it there. Don't drag Bob into this. He didn't do anything. He doesn't need to be part of this conversation. Listen, Antoon, this was fun. I gotta say, it was very interesting conversation. Thank you very much for kind of enlightening us with your knowledge and experience from the field. Any other comments or recommendation you want to give everyone before we go offline as kind of Antoon's key takeaways?
Get with them. So I'm sometimes just amazed at the speed that Kubernetes moves. Get with the program, because that's if you run modern apps, that's how your applications will evolve as well. So get in line with that. Automate things, upgrade always fast, make things parsable, grokkable. Carve them up in small components, because that's the way that the world is moving.
That's very fair and very wise words from a well-experienced man, I would say. So that's good. Antoon, thank you very much. This was great and much appreciated. I hope you had at least as much fun as I did. I know I did. And thank you all for listening, watching, suffering with us, as I say. And if you have any other question, shoot us out, ping us a note. We'll be more than happy to help and follow up. And we'll see you all again in our next stream. So thank you very much, Antoon. Thank you. Have a great evening, morning, and the rest of the day. Cheers, guys. Thank you.